my name is Mandy. I'm going to do a session now on CRM best practices. The one thing I kind of wanted to, kind of frame this around in the beginning. So you guys have seen a lot of sessions over the last couple of days, a lot of stuff related to the CRM. These best practices are really related to what you've seen so far. It's just more about how to go about implementing them. So before you start setting up, or if you're going to be implementing a new feature and you just want to kind of go about it the best way, that's what this is related to. So it's not really a how-to session so much as this is something to keep in mind as you're kind of going about implementing some of the things you've learned over the last few days. So this is our agenda. You don't have to know all of this right now. I'm going to keep bringing the agenda back up and just kind of highlighting which section we're in. But this kind of gives you an overview of what we're going to be covering, the kind of big areas that I thought we should cover best practices for. So we're going to start out with bringing data into the CRM. So there's a few different ways that you can do that. And the first one is through importing data, obviously. So we're going to start out with some limits. These are some things to keep in mind before you begin importing data. You are only able to import Excel, XLSX, or VCF files up to 5,000 records into our system. If it needs to be bigger than that, then you can do a CSV file. So if you're on the Enterprise Edition, the max you can import per batch is 20,000. If it's bigger than that, if the data that you have is much bigger, you can just split your files up into smaller sizes. That way you can get it all uploaded into the system. If you are using the skip or overwrite option when you're doing the import, that can only be done for CSV file format, so you aren't going to be able to do that for Excel files. And then you just need to make sure that your file size is no bigger than 5 megabytes. So you've got a record limitation, and then you've got a file size limitation as well. How should you format the data file before you go to import it? So this is really important. Basically, the very top row, you want to make sure that that's your column headers. It doesn't have to be, but if it's not, then when you go to do the import, it's basically going to be like column 1, column 2, column 3, and that might not be clear to you which data that needed to be or which column that was. So as long as you make sure that that very first row of your Excel file are your column headers, then it'll be really easy for you to go through and know, okay, I want to map first name to my first name column. I want to map last name to my last name column. If you're importing any sort of date or date time fields into the system, our default date time format is just going to be like a month, day, year, exactly in this format. This is mostly important for, like I said, if you're going to be importing, a lot of times this comes up with importing potentials into the system, that closing date. You just want to make sure that it's formatted like this so that when you do the import, it makes sure to catch all those. And then finally, the currency fields, same way, that's a big one with potentials for your amount field. If you have any symbols or columns in your data file, then it just kind of takes that and says, nope, we're not going to bring that in, and it makes it blank. So it'll still take the record, it just will leave your amount field blank, which can kind of cause you a lot of extra time. You'll need to go back and do another import. All right. So this is still related to the importing data. You have two different options on the import page. One of them is select or import my accounts or import my leads, depending on which module you're in. And the other one is import my organization accounts. So you want to make sure if you're importing data just for yourself, you'll want to select the import my accounts option. That's going to ensure that all of the records that you import go into your name. If you're importing data for someone else in your system, then you want to make sure to select the My Organization option. That's just going to say, that's going to add a field in there for ownership where you can say who needs to be the owner of this field. And the identifier for that is going to be their email address. So you just want to make sure you have a column for lead owner or account owner, and then you've got the email address for the user it needs to go to. Okay? So still related to importing data, there's a section for how you need to handle duplicate records. So it basically is kind of asking you, hey, should we encounter a duplicate? What do you want us to do about it? So it gives you three options. The first one's clone. You'll want to use this if you want no duplicate check involved at all. Basically, you're like, I know there might be a duplicate. I don't care. I want everything to come into the system regardless. You'll want to use the skip option if you do want a duplicate check. So if you're like, there's a possibility there's duplicates and I don't want that to happen, I want to make sure that that's prevented. I just want to select this option so it skips any duplicates that are in my file. The override option is more for if you need to update records. So it is a duplicate check as well, but it's usually more useful for if you need to go in and update a bunch of fields. So you're just doing an import overwrite to update that one field. Or if you just want to replace it, you're going to say, I want what's in my Excel file to win. I want that to just replace the duplicate that's in the system. So now we're going to talk about data coming into your system via web form. A couple of best practices around that. All right, so make sure that your web form is tracked as a lead source. Just make sure when you do that web form, you add in a lead source field. You can make that a hidden field so nobody sees it. Your customer won't see it at all. That just ensures that when the lead comes into your system, it's tagged with the lead source web form. So that way you're never wondering where this lead came from. That'll always kind of be tagged. That lead will be tagged with your web form. You'll also want to make sure that you add the lead approval option. When you're creating a web form, there's a section in there that says approve leads or lead approval, something like, but it's very specific. Basically, this just ensures that when the customer goes into your website and submits a contact us form, it creates a lead in your system, but it doesn't automatically get added into your data. This will just kind of put like a little holding spot where you can go in, you can look at it, and then you can determine, do I really want that lead in my system? And the reason you want to do this is because a lot of junk comes in through web forms, right? Bots will go in and submit random entries. You don't want all of that cluttering up your database. So you can just add this lead approval option, and then you get to go in and say yes or no to let that lead in. And then finally, make sure that your web form leads go to the right people. When you're setting up the web form, it asks who's going to be the owner of this lead. You can, by default, make it a specific user, or you can set up a lead approval or a lead assignment rule if you like. But this basically just kind of lets you make sure that your web form data leads are going to the right place. Instead of them all coming to you and then you having to take the time to manually assign them out, you can have them go to the sales rep that it needs to go to right away. All right, so this is the last section we're going to cover on how you can bring data in, or some best practices for bringing data in. And it's going to be evolved around manual entry. And so we're bringing this up because there's a number of things that can go wrong with people manually entering data into the system. Basically, there's always room for user error. So the best that you can do to kind of bring that down and make that less of an issue, the better for you guys. So one of the things you can do is create pick lists instead of text fields. So what's an example of this? A really common one, I actually spoke with somebody about this yesterday. They said that when they set their CRM account up initially, they made a lot of their fields text fields. So people were able to put whatever they wanted in there. And they actually wanted them to be more of a pick list, so they had to choose a specific value. When you make something a text field, people are able to put abbreviations, they can misspell, there can be any number of problems related to it. So just make sure that as much as you can when you're creating your fields, make them pick lists so people are forced to select an option instead of be able to put in anything they want. So an example of someplace that this is really useful is like, for example, state. By default, state is a text field. You can change that to be a pick, or you can't change it. You can create a pick list and populate it with all of the US states. Maintaining a style sheet. This is basically just something you want to keep in mind kind of internally with your team. Some different things that you want them to do the same. So this unfortunately isn't really like something you can specify inside the CRM. It's just more of letting your team know things like when you're entering phone numbers, this is the way you should enter them. Things that your team might not listen to, but you want to at least try to kind of get everybody on the same page about, just to kind of keep data as formal and as kind of informed as you can. And then finally, make your required fields mandatory. So this is one of those things that I've talked to a lot of customers who get really annoyed because they see a lot of leads in their system like Bob Smith and nothing else. No email, no phone number, no notes, no follow-up. Nothing's been added in there. And so if you make some of your fields mandatory, like email address, phone number, things like that, your reps will have to fill that data in. You don't want to make too many fields mandatory because then if they've got too much to enter, they'll probably just stop using the CRM altogether. But make sure you make the right fields mandatory so that you get more accurate data, more things that you guys need. All right, so we've moved out of our best practices on bringing data into the CRM. So now we're going to cover a section on keeping your data clean. So a little bit of this is going to kind of remind you of what we talked about during the importing section on duplication. But this is just kind of overview, like different things that you want to do to kind of prevent duplicate entries from coming into your system. So like we talked about during the import, you want to make sure if you want to prevent duplicates from coming in, select that skip duplicate option. That's going to do the duplicate check. That's not going to let any duplicate values into your system. You want to enable duplicate check fields. So out of the box, you can make your email field a duplicate check field. So you can say, enable this so then whenever somebody tries to put in another lead that's got the same email, it'll immediately say, hey, you can't do that. There's already a lead like that. You guys can do that for other fields too. So if you wanted to do it for like phone number or address, or if you've got some sort of custom field that's maybe like an identification of some kind, you can do that as well. So you can make other fields duplicate check fields. And then finally, like we talked about with our web forms, make sure to turn on the lead approval option. The lead approval, if it's a duplicate record, it will allow it into the system in that lead approval area. And then you're able to see, it'll be kind of filtered out and show you, hey, these guys are duplicates. So it just lets you see, like, this guy has already been added in my system. He submitted a web form. That's good data to know. Like, maybe they're really eager. They're like continuously submitting web forms. Like, you just want to know those things, and it kind of prevents that duplicate record from coming into the system at the same time. All right. So what if you didn't do any of this stuff before, and now you've got a bunch of duplicates in there already? What are some ways that you can remove duplicates? We have 2 different tools that can help you with that. One is more of an individual level. If you're in a record and you're like, man, I've seen that one before, I'm pretty sure that's a duplicate. You can do an immediate find and merge duplicate records. You just click on that option inside that particular lead or that particular contact or account, and it's going to bring up any matching results and let you find and merge those right away. The other option is a deduplication tool that we have. That's going to be more like module wide. So in each of your sales modules, so like leads, accounts, and contacts, up in the top right corner, there's a little like lead tools, contact tools kind of drop down. And one of those options is deduplicate. So when you select that, it's going to let you search based on one of 4 different options. The most popular one is usually email address. So you can click on email address, and then it'll find all of your matching records, all of your duplicates that you've got in the system right now based on the email address, or all of the matching records in that module. So this is a little bit of a tedious process. If there's already duplicates in there, it's not like you can just say, find all my duplicates and delete them. You don't want to do that, right? If there's duplicates, there's a good chance that 2 different people might have been doing stuff on each one, and you don't want to lose that data, right? So this deduplication process actually lets you look at each of those records side by side, pick and choose which ones need to carry over, which ones need to win, and then it's going to merge all of the notes and activities and history related to each of those records together. So that way it's cleaned up, but you didn't lose anything important. All right, so we're going to move out of keeping data clean, and we're going to move into the next section, which is going to be updating records. So the main reason I've kind of added this in here is a lot of times I see customers manually updating stuff or manually making changes to each individual record. And I wanted to kind of bring up that there are tools in the system that will let you do mass updates and mass deletes and mass transfers. And so this first one is related to sales tools. So again, those sections up in the top right corner of your sales modules, leads, accounts, contacts. There's a little section for example, lead tools, contact tools. It's where you're going to find that deduplication option as well. In those sections, there's 3 different options. One is mass update. So you want to use this whenever you need to mass update a group of records. So instead of going through each individual record and making an update, if you need to make that same update for a bunch of people, you can do it as a mass update. You can select all or just select the ones that apply and then mass update the status. So instead of having to just go through and spend a bunch of time doing it individually, then you can do it this way. If you didn't set up a macro, I know Fernando had a session earlier and he talked about macros. If you don't have those, or if you haven't created those, or those are a little bit terrifying for you because they are for some people, that's good to know, because if you send out a mass email, maybe you then want to go in and select all and mass update their status to indicate that you sent them a mass email. All right, mass transfer records. This is really important. When somebody leaves your CRM account, their data doesn't get deleted when you deactivate that user. Their data is all still in the system, and it all will still show up under that old user. They're no longer active, but we keep a log that they're still the owner. This is good because you want to go in and you want to transfer ownership of all those records over to the person who's taking over for them. But you want to see where things left off. You want to know where the old guy left notes and tasks and things like that, and where the new guy can pick up. So if you go in, you can do a mass transfer. You can say transfer all of the leads that belong to this ex-employee to the new employee. It's just going to transfer ownership over. It's not going to lose anything as far as content or notes or anything like that. It'll just make sure that they're able to see, oh, okay, this guy, he left off here. He had all these notes. This is where I'm picking it up from there. So it's just a really good idea. Sometimes when employees leave, some data can kind of fall to the wayside because the warmth of the lead left with them. You just want to make sure that that doesn't happen. And then finally, mass deleting unwanted data. So there's another option in there for mass delete. I usually, as a best practice, recommend not to ever delete any data. There's really no reason to. You can always mass update the lead status to like dead lead or junk lead or something like that, or just individually update that instead of deleting it. It's good to have it. But I do talk to a lot of people that they're like, nope, I don't want to see it. I don't want it in there anymore. So instead of having to go through and selecting all and deleting, you can also do something like that. You could set up a mass delete scenario, just say, show me everybody whose lead status is junk or lost, and then just select all delete. So it's a little bit easier. All right, so this next section, it's still on updating records. So this can get a little bit tricky, especially if you're not familiar with this feature. It's just another way that you can update records, really, except usually with like our mass update tool, you can only update one field at a time. This will allow you to update multiple fields on multiple records at the same time. But basically, what it's going to do is it's just going to take the view you're looking at and turn it into a spreadsheet. So if you're looking at all open leads, it's just going to open up all open leads as a spreadsheet exactly as you see it inside the CRM. And then you can go through and make changes to all the fields you want and save it. So instead of having to go into each record, updating lead status, updating something like their state based on what their zip code is, updating who the owner needs to be, a bunch of other things, you can just kind of do it all in one place and then save it, and it'll just make all the changes kind of magically. It's kind of a little bit complicated to understand. So like I said, definitely we can take a look at that feature later on if y'all want to. All right. So the next thing we're going to get into is customizing layout. Now, y'all probably seen a lot already on customization. So this isn't really focused so much around how to add new fields, but it's more how to take stuff out. Because I talk to customers all the time who are like, what are all of these fields? I don't understand what you would need this field for, what you need that field for. How do I get rid of all of these sections down at the bottom? That comes up a lot, right? It's kind of one size fits all when you first buy it. And then you want to customize it and make it your own from there. And you definitely want to remove stuff that's not needed because you don't want your sales team to be like, what are all these fields? This is completely irrelevant for us. The more easy it is for them to use and the less that's kind of in the way and seeming obtrusive, the more likely they are to adopt it and use it. All right. And so basically, just like we kind of talked about, you can go into your customization area and you can get rid of all those fields that aren't needed. I say that there's really no limit to how much you can remove. You can take about just everything out. For example, like in leads, you can take everything except for last name out. There's no shame in removing everything but first name, last name, email, and phone number. A lot of people do it, you know? So you can definitely get this as narrowed down as you need to, so you're just working with just the fields y'all want to see. Similarly, related lists. So some of y'all might not know or might not be aware of what related lists are. You know all those sections that are down below notes, so attachments, invoices, potentials, open activities, closed activities, all of those sections down below, those are called related lists in our system. And anytime you're like, I do not use this module, I don't want that, you can remove that related list entirely. So you can go through and you can customize all of the related lists that are in there. You can say, don't show this, don't show this, don't show this one. You can also remove entire modules. So a lot of people are like, I don't use invoices, I don't use quotes, I don't use any of these. Can I get rid of them? Absolutely. You can go in and you can just work with leads, contacts, accounts, and activities if you want. So you can really kind of narrow this down to just what you want to see. And that's a good idea, right? In the beginning, make it as simple as you can so that your team picks it up. And then you can always kind of grow with it and add modules in later. All right? So that was kind of more about how to remove stuff. This is going to be more related to organizing sections and organizing fields and things like that. So, like I mentioned before, there's some of those pick lists in there that might have values that are completely irrelevant to you guys. The industry field is a big one. It's usually got several options that some people are like, I work in the beauty salon business. None of these fields make sense to me. So you can definitely go in and you can customize anywhere that you see a pick list in the CRM. So for example, lead source, lead status, industry, those are all pick lists. You can go in and you can change those drop-down values. You can make them whatever you like. So I definitely recommend going in, changing each of those so that it fits exactly what your business uses so that it makes more sense for you and your team. You can also reorder those lists, those related lists that I mentioned. Maybe you do want to see quotes, maybe you do want to see invoices, but you don't want it to be at the very top, or you're like, just put it down at the very bottom, or you want to see social, but you want to see it higher because social is more important. You can go in and you can reorganize how those sections look down below. You can, in addition to taking stuff out, you can just adjust it and move it around. Also, the columns that show up within that. A lot of people ask about this. They're like, hey, I can see contacts on my accounts, but I can't see what their job title is. So I want to know, like, at this specific account, these are my contacts. What role do they play in their company? You can organize those columns. You can add in the columns that are more relevant for you guys. And then lastly, creating sections. So just like you can create custom fields, you can also create sections. So you can create sections that will organize your fields better. So for example, by default, you've got sections for lead information, address information, and description information. You can add a new section for social media information, and then you can move the Twitter and Facebook and Instagram and all those different accounts that fields you might have added all into the social media section. So it's just a good way to kind of organize the data better so it's not all in like one clump in lead information or all in one clump in a contact information. So this next section is going to get into mass emailing in the CRM. Some best practices related to that. I know a lot of you might be using Zoho campaigns, so you might not be doing your emailing from inside the CRM. But if you are, or if your sales team is using this in any way for like sending out emails to their clients, then this is good to kind of know like how to organize and how to create those templates, or some best practices, I should say, for creating them. So when you're creating a template inside the CRM, couple things to keep in mind. Create folders to organize those templates. So by default, there's just one folder. It's called public, and everybody can see everything that's in there. You probably don't want that, right? If you've got a lot of people in your CRM, maybe some people are in marketing, some people are in sales. The marketing people don't need to see the sales templates. The sales people don't need to see the marketing templates. You can create folders and say, just show this folder to these users. Just like you can with like your reports and your views that you're creating and all of that, you can do the same thing with your folders for your templates. Similarly, it's really important, choose the right module when you're creating your template. So when you're creating a template, the very first field at the top, it says module, and it's a drop down, and it defaults to leads. I feel like so many people will want a template to be available for contacts. They create it for leads, and then they can't access it in contacts, and they don't know why. And that's why. When you create a template for leads, the fields that are included in the leads module aren't the same as the fields that are in contacts. And so those are two separate kind of template groups. So you just want to make sure, if you want, for some reason, to send the exact same style of template to your contacts as you would to your leads, then you just want to make sure to recreate that template with the same content, but select contacts instead of leads. That way you're able to pull from your contacts module, and you'll be able to select that template when you go to send out. And then finally, utilize those merge fields that are available inside the templates. When you go to create a template, you can just make like a block of text, and it can, just be kind of generic, and you can send that out to your customer. But it's much better for you if you personalize it. You insert merge fields like their first name or their industry that they're in, or things like that, just so it makes more sense. Like when they open it, they're like, oh, they're addressing me. They know what my industry is. They probably aren't going to be like thinking that you created that individually for them, but they will definitely see that it is a little bit more tailored to them instead of just being kind of a hello user or something like that. Okay. And so then kind of related to the mass emailing is the sending side of it. So when you are in your leads module, for example, you can just go in and you can select random people, or you can say select all, send mass email, and choose your email template and push it out. That is one way you can do it. But most people want some sort of criteria for who they're sending something to. So maybe they have created a promotional offer that's only available in a certain region. You want to create a recipient list for those people. So basically, when you're sending emails, think about your audience. If you're specifying this to a particular audience, then you just want to create a list of those people. You can create a filter for, if it's like a location thing, it could be like a filter for state. So let's say we wanted to send an email out to everybody that's in Texas at some sort of promotional offer. Create a list for state as Texas, and then that way you're looking at just your leads in Texas. And then you can use your send mass email tool. So instead of selecting on, sending email, and then pushing it out, there's a mass emails tool in the top right corner, just like there's a mass update leads and mass delete leads, there's an option for mass email leads. So you can choose that, choose your list view, choose your template, and then send it out. In this section, you can also schedule emails for later. So instead of creating a task to remind yourself to send an email at the end of the week or to send it out at 8 o'clock so you get good timing, go ahead and schedule the email. You can go in there, you can select the template, the recipient group, and then you can say the exact time you want it to go out. Now, if you're using Zoho campaigns, then these things won't be necessary, but this is just for if you're doing your mass emailing from inside the CRM, some things to keep in mind. Navigation in the system. This is very common. A lot of people are kind of confused in the beginning of how do I get around? How do I find things? How do I navigate to certain places? And it's mostly related to searching, right? So the most common option is up in the top right corner. You've got a little search bar. You can go in there and type anything you want, and it's going to search across your entire database. But what if you want to just search within a specific module? How can you, or what are some ways that you can kind of make it easier on yourself? So as a best practice, if you're just looking for a particular lead or you're just looking for a particular contact, instead of searching and having to wade through all of the stuff that you have in your database that might match, just tell it to just search within leads. So from that area, when you're in your search box, there's a little drop down you'll notice. It's like a little arrow on the left-hand side. And you can say, just search within leads or just search within contacts. That way it kind of narrows that search down so you're not having to kind of look through all of the different options. Now, hopefully there's only one result in there, but I think in like your scenario you mentioned, you've kind of got some people in leads and contacts they match. That can kind of help you to find people easier. Another option you can do is to use search filters. So let's say not only do you want to kind of narrow this down to one particular module, but you also want to narrow it down to one particular view. So maybe you've got a really big list view of people in Texas. Your list of leads in Texas is really big. If you search within leads, you might kind of end up finding a bunch of people that have matches, or you don't find the exact thing that you want. You can go into your list view you already created for Texas, and then you can click on there's a little search icon that will bring down a filter option, and then you can filter out from there. So it just kind of lets you search within a search, and it's a little bit easier to find stuff. And then finally, modify your search layout. So this can be a little bit tricky if you've never seen it, but when you search for a record, it kind of has a default set of fields that come up. So when you search for something, it's going to find any records that match, even if you've added a note or you've added a field onto that record that matches. Let's say, for example, you have a field called favorite color inside your leads, and you search for pink. And then every single lead who selected pink is going to come up, but you're not going to know why, because favorite color is not a field that shows up in your search layout. So you can modify the search layout to include any fields that you want. You probably want to include like industry or something like that that would be a little bit more relevant for identifying records. Favorite color may not come up on your list, but that's just kind of an example to get you to know like what you can add into your search layout. All right, so this other thing is the list views. So navigating around, sometimes people are really confused about how do I narrow down my search results, or how do I narrow down the leads to just show me specific groups? Or they'll say, I see all leads when I go into leads, I just want to see my leads. Or how do I see new leads? Things like that. So in your CRM account, there's default list views already ready and set for you. If you go into leads, up in the top left corner, there's a drop down that says all open leads. When you click on that, it's going to give you more list view options. So you'll see my leads, leads created this week, recently modified leads, last activity. There's a lot of different kind of list views that are predefined in there, but you can create additional ones. So like Samir covered before, you can create ones that filter down further if you want to. You can also modify the fields that show up in any of those views. A lot of people are like, I don't want to just see first name, last name, email, and phone number. How do I see the company name? How do I see the industry that they're in? How do I see their lead status all on that main page? And the answer is you can just edit the list view to include new columns. So if you're looking at the list view, there's an option for edit. It's kind of hidden because it's like a little ghost menu. If you hover over that drop down that says all open leads, for example, you'll see it kind of pop up on the right. You can just choose edit, and then you can add new columns in there. So it just kind of gives you a way to include more data into your list view so you don't have to go into each of the records to see what you're looking for. And then this last section is going to cover taking data out of the CRM. Now, hopefully this isn't for like the purpose of leaving Zoho. It's hopefully you just want to get a backup of your data. And so there's a couple different ways you can do that. People are always asking me, how do I get a backup of my data? How do I restore my data? How do I save it somewhere? How do I get it so that I know it's secure? These are the different options you have for exporting. So if you have a small business and you just need to export everything in leads or everything in contacts specifically, we have an export data tool. You can just go in there, you can select the module you want, and then you can export. Now, I say this is good for small businesses because it'll do a max of 3,000 records per module. So let's say you go into leads and you do this export option, it's just going to export 3,000 leads. So if you're small, then there's a good chance that that might be enough. If you're a little bit bigger, and even if you're not, I say that this is a great option. Everybody in here should be taking advantage of their data backups. I recommend everybody do this. You get 2 free data backups per month, so there's no reason not to have that in place. At least have 1 monthly scheduled backup. Basically, all that happens is we take a backup of everything. So we will, it'll export all of your leads, accounts, contacts, everything. It'll put them in a zip file and it'll send it to you in an email. So it'll just be a link you can click on and download. It's just a great way for you to always have a backup of your data if you want it. So that last option is for exporting reports. So this is really handy for if you just need specific data, right? So when you do a data backup or you do the export data option, it's just going to give you a full kind of every single thing that's in that module. So there's a lot of fields in there. You probably don't need all of that. Let's say you just want to do an export that's just got first name, last name, and email address. Maybe you're wanting to upload this into some other database for like a email validation check or something like that. You can create a report that'll just show you all of your leads that are in your database and just has those specific columns in there. And then you can export that report. So it'll come out in a CSV or an Excel or a PDF file if you like. So that way you can get a full backup, but it's full backup of that module technically, but it's just the fields that you want to see.